Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
And I think fundamentally, many people who are struggling today, they take new diet, they take new stressful hobbies like exercising, or let me run for marathon, or something very ambitious. And they often neglect the fact that by sleeping maybe 7 hours a night and building a better habit for sleep might actually have a bigger impact. And if you sleep well, then you recover faster. And by the way, if you sleep more, you actually burn more calories. Kind of counterintuitive, because if you sleep more, then you have no time to eat that much. And I think that together with some type of, I'm not saying fasting, I'm saying like little bit time restrictive eating would be amazing.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed Ari Tulla. He's a San Francisco-based entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO of the smart nutrition service ELO, whose mission is to transform food from the leading cause of disease to medicine. We discussed his journey into creating a cutting-edge, customized health company, specific biomarkers that are the foundation of optimal performance, what can be done to address the rise in chronic health conditions in America, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. This was a very interesting interview with Ari. Lots of great tips. He's got a really cool supplement company called ELO. Check it out. Hope you enjoy the interview, and thanks so much for listening. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have CEO and co-founder of ELO, Ari Tulla. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian, great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on from San Francisco. And before we get into it, I have a bunch of topics to talk about. Perhaps maybe give the audience a little bit of background of yourself and how you started ELO, which is a nutritional supplement company.
I'd love to. So my name is Ari. I come from Finland originally, so been living in the Bay Area for about 15 years. And I've been really heavily involved in nutrition for the last about 20 years. I got into by accident. My wife had a thyroid tumor over 20 years ago, and it led into autoimmune diseases, hormonal challenges, and just overall feeling not good. And that was one of those things that is medically unknown, that nobody knows what to do about it. And over the years, we realized that diet was able to help her, and it finally enabled us to get a family and all these things. And it really made me a big believer on this idea that food is medicine. Food can also cause a lot of disease, as we all know. And that has been one of the things that has been very center of my life, because of course as a good husband and partner, you wanted to help, and I went along with all the different diets and so forth, and we went into this sort of almost like a keto type of diet long time ago, maybe 18 years ago, where you eat no sugar, you eat very little grains, and you eat little meat. And that was helping my wife to lower inflammation in her body. And finally, the body was able to heal herself. And I, of course, did the same type of diet, and I feel great, and I'm performing at a pretty high level physically and also mentally because of that today, I think. And Elo was born about maybe 3 years ago, when I finally started to think about my next business after selling the previous ones. And it really felt great to build the company at this time and age, where you have now platforms in place about food delivery. You have a lot of science in place about the impact of diet and nutrition to our health, and also had a great founding team in place that we were able to start the company. So that was the kind of foundational piece of Elo, and we've been around now for about 2 years, and it's been wonderful to see the impact we can have on human health by providing them the right nutrition at the right time.
Yeah, interesting. And with what you learned from your wife, what type of principles? I know you mentioned you went keto. Is that right? back. How long ago was it? That was 18 years ago, huh?
Yeah, I don't think we knew what. I don't think the keto. I don't know if the word was
Yeah,
available,
right.
but it was basically a diet that you eat very clean, and you eat food that is helping you lower inflammation. And of course, I mean, the science then wasn't that evident about sugar and carbs, but we thought about it. We had a lot of doctors who helped us to think about it, and I think we were one of the not first, but one of the early people who really saw the benefit of this. And of course, today, you have many companies out there. As an example, like Verda Health, they are reversing type 2 diabetes today with the keto diet, and it's amazing to see 10,000 plus people who have been healed now by doing that. And I mean, there's so much going on today in the world that is based on somehow on behavior change and nutrition. And I think you really are what you eat, and the food really is medicine. So those are the fundamental principles of my thinking every day.
Yeah, I definitely agreed. I definitely agree with you with that. How with your company, Elo, I know I was taking a look at it. It's nutritional supplements, but it is different than a normal, supplement company in the sense that it looks like you do customized formulations based on biomarkers. Perhaps maybe get a bit into that and how that works.
Yeah. So at Elo, we call it smart nutrition. So we are a smart nutrition company. Maybe it's the first time you hear about it, but I think it is really the future, where we are trying to make the nutrition smart. I think about like your smartphone, your smartwatch, or your smart car, or whatever you have, smart home. What it means in nutrition is that all the things we do at Elo, they are personal. They're made for you. All the things are also precise. They are grounded in science. And in our case, they are grounded in blood biomarker testing, for example, all the wearable device data we get from you, and also, of course, health questionnaires. And lastly, the smart nutrition is proactive. It basically gets better over time. So there's an AI model that is learning about the impact of the nutrition to you specifically. We are all different. And let's say it could be like you don't like some taste, or something is not working for you. All that feedback loop is coming back to you, and then we modify, improve based on that. So if I kind of summarize what we do today, this is a early incarnation of Elo. We've been around live in the market for about a year in a clinical trial, and now for the last 3 months live. And we have a lot of people signing up every day today, which is of course wonderful. So we do in the beginning, you sign up on the web, we direct you to download the Elo app. Elo app is the centerpiece of everything. You get a blood testing kit at your home. So what you do with that, you basically, you get it home, you prick your finger, you send it back to our lab. We test 12 biomarkers today. Those are not just like nutritional biomarkers or minerals. They are lipid panels. So we do your cholesterol, LDL, HDL, VLDL, triglycerides. We test your A1C, which is the diabetes biomarker. We also look at your mineral vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin B12. We look at your iron with ferritin, and we also look at your inflammation. Like you heard about my wife. I mean, inflammation, in my opinion, is a really key metric for human health. So we test homocysteine. So it's the same type of panel you get if you go to a very expensive concierge doctor that you pay, 10,000 a year or something. And we do the test every 90 days. Once we get the results, you are connecting with a Elo coach. These are registered dietitians. So you can talk with your coach, you go through your data, and then you get access to the app, and you can communicate with your coach every day if you want. You can send a photo of a food you are eating. You can send a photo of a label of a product you are thinking, and so forth. And they're going to help you go through all these things. Some people use it daily, other people use it monthly. And then once you have your plan set, you will get a pack of supplements in a daily package that have your name on, and they come every month. And they have been modified every month based on the feedback loop we get about you. So it really is, I think, maybe the first time you really can get smart supplements that are made for you specifically. We make the cocktail and the formulation based on 60 different active compounds that are all validated in clinical trials with humans. So we have the whole Elo AI is based on all the clinical studies done today in the world for humans related to these nutrients. And there are some products we haven't yet added because there's not enough evidence scientifically that they can have an impact on our health.
Did you say 6 or 60?
60. 60.
60. Okay, gotcha. Very cool. I mean, I've seen some customized supplement companies, but nothing perhaps where you are in contact with a consultant that can sort of guide you along and make adjustments as you start taking the supplements. What type of, do you guys talk about lifestyle changes as well? Because obviously supplements are one aspect, but obviously, as you know, lifestyle changes are probably, if not more important than supplements.
100%. So these are dietitians who have been working with people like you and me to help them to perform better, or they are people who work in a hospital setting, working with people who have diabetes or who have cancer. So they are bringing that same knowledge now in every conversation. And some members are more willing to change behavior. Some people just want to have very, very directed supplements for them that are helping them to optimize maybe deficiencies and so forth that we found on the blood testing. It really depends. But most people, when they go through this, they are amazed of the quality of the people we have now as the Elo full-time coaches. Because I mean, I don't know if you have had a chance to really work with a dietitian. I had never had that before, and most people, I don't think they have had the experience. And it really helps you when you can communicate with a person. What should you do and how can you change behavior? Because some things are not evident, and often, like you all know, the micro changes are important. You can't change everything at once. You have to change one thing at a time, and we can help on that. And the Elo app, of course, is then guiding you through daily how do you change the habits in your life. So, and I mean, Elo is a smart nutrition company. I mean, supplements are one part of this. I have an array of things coming. I can't talk about it yet. I'm happy to join again when we have new product coming in. But this is not a supplement company. This is a nutrition company. And our goal is really to be able to help you to perform at your optimal level, get healthy or stay healthy, depending what your goal is.
Very interesting. Yeah. So you'll have more coming out in the future. And what, other than, your wife obviously going through some health issues, what else prompted you to start Elo, and did you, as far as sourcing the supplements and stuff, where's it all sourced from?
Yeah, so on the foundational side, I spent the last 20 years in tech. I got into the first startup 99. We were building websites for global companies from Finland. We were kids at the time, and Web 1.0. Then later I was working for Nokia for a long time. So I stumbled upon, I joined the team building the first smartphone before iPhone and Android. We invented the App Store, we invented the gaming store, mobile gaming, all these things. And then I came to the Valley to run game studios and global app studios at Nokia. And so I've been doing like 20,000 apps, I think, in my life to date. So more than most people. So I know a lot about the space. And the last decade I spent in healthcare. I built a company called Better Doctor. It was a doctor finder app that turned into a backbone kind of data company for the healthcare. So if you go today and look at your doctor network at your insurance company, it's been designed by my last company's tools. So every doctor network today is done with the tools that we created. And my goal for that company was to help people find a doctor they love. And we were hoping to help 1 million people. And last year we helped 200 million people to navigate healthcare. So we kind of mission accomplished. And now my goal is to help millions of people get access and use nutrition to heal themselves, and that's our goal. And I had a lot of health issues later that happened, or my family, my wife is able to fix many of those, but then later my first son died, and that was the time when I got into healthcare and got into building the Better Doctor to help people find a doctor. We couldn't find the right doctor. We lost our son, so that was unfortunate. And luckily we were able to kind of help many more people in a similar setting. And we also started the investment fund. We run with my wife that we invest in these startups in this space. We are investors, many companies that you probably know in this space that are quite big already. So that's kind of my life passion now, is to invest all the money I have, invest all the time I have available into making nutrition more accessible to people. And what we do if you take a look at specifically the supplements and things we do, I never used supplements in my life before I started the company. And of course, my team tested my blood work, and I had done it quite a while for many years already. I do every quarterly testing in the lab, and they found out that my vitamin D was super low. My doctor had never told me about it, anything. My vitamin D was 15, super low. Yeah. And then, my team of us, started to help me to get it up. And I was supplementing at 5,000 IU of vitamin D per day. And that's the normal kind of higher dose to give to people. And nothing happened. So they were like, what's going on? And I had been fully sequenced many times by other companies. And they took my sequencing data of my DNA, and they found out that I have 2 mutations for my vitamin D. I don't metabolize sun properly. I don't metabolize vitamin D in my body properly. Suddenly I had to be super dosed, like, 30,000 IU vitamin D. And that was able to finally help me to get up to normal level. And what happened? I felt very different. I slept better, I performed better. And I was like, that's crazy. So then I actually sequenced my extended family in Finland, and they all had the same mutation. They were all low vitamin D. And we were able to help them to get back on the normal level as well. That was before COVID. And now none of them died of COVID. My parents are old and so forth. So, that's kind of the power I've seen personally on like simple things like, just vitamin mineral levels can have an impact. And of course, to your question is a really good one. How do we know that the supplements specifically are something that can have an impact on people's health? I think most supplements out there, even in Whole Foods, are stuff that you should never eat. They are not what they say. They are not dosed properly. Sometimes not even the right thing they claim they are. So we test every supplement we have in a third party. What we do also, we are now starting to source supplements from the best people in the market. Keep in mind, like Elo is coming in these daily packets. I'm showing you her daily packet. We can put any pills in these packets. It doesn't need to be coming from one vendor. So we are talking now with a lot of people that you probably know in the supplement space who have the highest product for, let's say, omega-3, for example. We picked a company called EWI, who have a really interesting new vegan omega-3 product made in the US from algae. So we added their pill into Elo packets. And we are now talking to dozens of other companies who also have these very, very credible products that have a big impact in clinical trials. So that's kind of how we do it. And on top of that, we test all the products ourselves for efficacious, impact, and also for purity. So think about heavy metals and toxins that could be in these pills.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting you bring up the vitamin D. The vitamin D supplements. Especially I'm in the Midwest in Chicago. We don't get a lot of sun, and that's typically where you would get it from. And it's interesting that you had a mutation where you couldn't actually absorb vitamin D. And I love how you do the blood testing as well. I think a lot of people get blood tests. They go to their doctor. Actually, I had a client recently tell me that, and like the feedback on it is just minimal, right? Like they might look at their cholesterol and LDL, and that'll be it. And for the most part, statins are dished out left and right. And, we know that there's other ways that and there's probably better ways to deal with, maybe high LDL perhaps. And if you have, more importantly, like the small particles, the VLDL, like you mentioned, to help get those down. Is that something you guys look into as far as screening and making sure that, you're dealing with particle size and not just, the overall picture of total cholesterol?
I love your point there, and I think you know this space well. It's a good question. So LDL, HDL, triglycerides, VLDL are kind of the core fat measurements we do, and I think there's so much more we could do in the future. Today, I think at Elo we are a little bit limited as any at-home collection company because we can't collect 5 vials of blood. That would be very difficult to do alone at home. Yeah. So we are requiring like a finger prick today. Think about like 5 drops of blood. That is still like, some people, it's difficult. They have never done it before. So I don't claim it, it's always totally painless. It's sometimes difficult, but everybody can do it. and it's maybe easier than going to a lab and using big needles and so forth. But what's happening today in this world is super compelling. Think about after COVID started, the at-home collection biomarker testing market has grown 11 times. And there has been huge amount of innovation taking place already. And we are just getting started as an industry. So I think in the next 10 years, we are really moving from this idea where you have to go to a lab and we need to take, many vials of blood. I just did a blood test today earlier. I took nine vials of blood from my vein, and it's not very fun. But that same thing can be done, I think, in the next 10 years at home. I don't mean at home collected. It can be tested at home, like your COVID test, that you swap your nose and then you put it in a test and you see results automatically. Or, you have companies like Vessel Health, where you can pee in a stick and they can give you guidance on what happens. You take a photo with your camera on your phone and it tells you your results. Very narrow number of biomarkers, of course, today, but that's going to be the future. So I think, I don't think we know necessarily today as a scientific community that are we measuring the right things? Like to your point, LDL can be high, but if you have large particles in your LDL and it's high, it might not be a big deal. So sometimes we are making these things maybe a bit too big of a deal easily. And of course, you mentioned statins. I didn't say that, but that's one example where 50 million Americans are getting a drug that doesn't work for many people, and it has side effects. And I think you and me both agree that most people who get statins could be also treated with better nutrition.
Yeah, totally true. And yeah, I think we were just touching the iceberg of where we're going as far as, like you mentioned, with COVID and everything, if anything, if there was a positive from that, it realized that we have to all take our health into our own hands and be proactive about it. And so what do you think should be done, other than obviously companies like yourself, where you're sort of doing the self-testing and finding out what works for you? But what other areas do you think we need to address, like as far as in America or worldwide, for all these chronic health issues that have just been on the rise?
That's a massive question.
I know.
It's a $2 trillion question, because we spend about 2 to 3 trillion a year on managing people who have these issues related to the metabolic health. Think about obesity, heart disease, including high blood pressure and so forth. And diabetes, of course, is a rampantly growing. Like we're gonna have double the amount of diabetics in the next coming decade than we have today, and we already have a big issue today. So I look at health, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not even a scientist in a realm of human health. I've been a layman who spent last 20 years trying to find a way to help my family, and then I've been very, very involved on trying to kind of stay at optimal performance myself, from the athletic perspective and also a mental perspective. So for me, it's all about the right nutrition, like what is right for you, and not just what you put in your mouth, but when do you do it? Like I do intermittent fasting often. I believe that there's a big impact on that. I do prolonged fasting every quarter, 1 week. I think there's a massive impact on human health. And I'm a believer that with the right nutrition, we can actually impact not only lifespan, but also a little bit, I think, on the whole span of how long you live.
Right.
Health span, of course, means how many good years you have. Ideally, you want to be 95, you want to be skiing down the slope, and then you die. That would be a great way to go, I think, for many people. Right. Not to be in a ventilator, or like most people die today when they get old. But the second point is really sleep. I think recovery and sleep and mindfulness are super important aspects. And the third, of course, is activity, exercise. You don't need to be a runner or triathlete or anything like that, but you need to move enough. As an example, I'm involved in 2 companies doing glucose monitors today, Levels Health and Super Sapiens. Both of them are really interesting because you put the Abbott meter on you and you can see real-time impact of glucose in your body. Well, you can, I can't eat rice anymore. I can't eat oatmeal anymore. I can't eat corn because of the learning I had ever. But what I learned is that, when I eat something like pasta that will spike me always, go for a walk for 15 minutes after the meal, and you're going to damp the spike away. So it's like really building a system where, we optimize all these things. And one thing, I'm involved in Aura for 8 years as an investor. I've been wearing it 7 years every night. So I have plenty of data, thousands of nights. And I'm a kind of guy that, last night I slept, I got 95 sleep score. And I usually get over 90. I'm never going to sleep 3 bad nights in a row, no matter what I do. There could be a bachelor party or whatever happens, with the people I love. People are going to go out the third night. I'm going to go sleep at 9.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to, when you know the data, you don't want to stretch your body too far. You want to be sensible about it. And I think being reasonable is very key in human health.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a lot of great points there, right? Optimizing sleep, going periods without food, activity level. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I talk about like these micro workouts. If anything, over the years, I've probably decreased the actual time I spend in the gym, but maybe the frequency goes up, right? So 20 minutes, you can go and do plenty and be done. And so I love how you talk about fasting. We talk about it a lot on my podcast quite a bit. And it's interesting. You do daily periodic fasting, and then once a quarter, you do a longer fast. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been doing sometimes like water only. Today I'm doing the prolonged fast because I really like what they do, and I'm a reptile prey man, so I'm a simple kind of guy. So I need the guidance how to do it. So they give me a cheat sheet, what to do now, what to do in an hour. So it helps me a lot. And I mean, those are all the things that we will incorporate into Elo going forward, because we really are trying to build a smart nutrition company that can help you integrate these things we all know work into your life. Of course, you have to start somewhere. So the beginning we have is the supplements, because we know that 150 million Americans, they eat supplements every week. 150 million of them don't know if they eat the right things or they do anything to you. I mean, that's a massive problem. So at least we can help you immediately with that. Because with us, if we give you supplements that have no impact on your biomarkers, we will change those supplements. And we know as much, it's totally transparent. You know what I know about you, and we can work on that together with your coach. So I'm not claiming that we always succeed, but I'm saying that, we give you 100% transparency on what will happen, and then you can have a say on what might be better or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, a lot of times with supplements, I feel like people just guess what to take. They hear something, they get an ad, and who knows the sourcing of these supplements. I mean, I've had a few other companies on my podcast. One of them, which I don't know if you've heard of Upgraded Formulas, Bart and Scott, they do hair mineral testing. And I've done some testing with them. It's really interesting. Is this something you've thought about maybe implementing down the road? Are there certain tests that maybe are better when you use your hair as opposed to blood?
We have our platform at Elo is agnostic in a way. So if you, by the way, want, you can connect to Elo via Apple Health, all the different wearable devices you have. Like, I have Aura, Whoop, I have Apple Watch, I have a scale, blood pressure cuff. You can connect the data, so we get all those biomarkers. We call biomarkers broadly biomarkers like blood and urine and saliva and hair follicles that are more from the body, and also digital biomarkers that are more from the outside of your skin. So I think there's so much happening, and I'm involved as an investor in many of the companies that are looking at different, like methylation studies, looking at the epigenetics. I mean, super interesting from your saliva. Urine is interesting. Hair follicles. You could probably do. There's a company we just involved recently called I can't remember the name, but they do sweat sensing. They have a sweat sensor that is maybe able to detect glucose. Game changer. You don't need to have a big needle. Let's say in 5 years maybe it works. But I'm in for this in a way that I don't care how we get the data, as long as the data is scientifically proven and valid. And today, one thing I don't yet really believe fully yet is the basically using stool samples and looking at your your microbiome, and
Yeah.
it's compelling, super compelling, but it's 10 times to 100 times more complicated than DNA, and it took us a while to understand the DNA. So it might be another many years before we actually know fully what it is. And I'm kind of guy who I live some part of the year in Europe, and we've been traveling a lot, and I can be 2 months in another place in the world where you have a different type of microbiome, or different type of food, and different type of bacteria. So my microbiome will change completely in that 2 months, and then I get back to the California, and again I change. So I don't think we really know what's good or bad. And now you can get these, you can do the microbiome test today, and you can get very credible looking feedback saying that stop doing tomatoes and kale. Like that's what it told me. I love kale, and I mean kale is pretty good for me. I think maybe I had it too much, but I mean it's like a blanket, no kale. And so I mean I don't think that's very productive if you put people from eating kale like I do every day to eating like I don't know, pork.
Got it. Yeah. As far as gut microbiome, I'm sure there's a lot more research that needs to be done regarding testing your stool and seeing if you should have certain probiotics, and that whole industry I think is just starting out personally. But I love everything you're doing with ELO. One question I ask a lot of my guests towards the end is what one tip would you give someone that's maybe trying to get their body back to what there once was? Maybe they're in their 50s and 60s and they want to get to where they were in their 30s and turn back the clock a little bit. What one tip would you give that individual?
I would, because I have such a unique background of following and seeing the Aura. Aura is a sleep tracking ring that is out now in million hands or so. A million people use it every night. And they really focused on understanding sleep better. And I think fundamentally, many people who are struggling today, they take new diet, they take new stressful hobbies like exercising, or let me run for marathon, or something very ambitious. And they often neglect the fact that by sleeping maybe 7 hours a night and building a better habit for sleep might actually have a bigger impact. And if you sleep well, then you recover faster. And by the way, if you sleep more, you actually burn more calories. Kind of counterintuitive, because if you sleep more, then you have no time to eat that much. And I think that together with some type of, I'm not saying fasting, I'm saying like little bit time restrictive eating would be amazing. You can have a breakfast if you like a breakfast, but don't make it heavy on carbs. Make it more like an omelette or maybe a smoothie that is low glycemic, meaning that not spiking your glucose, not a lot of sugar. And like apple is better than a banana, as an example. And then I think one thing that people often don't think about, and it depends on your culture. Like I have friends who are Italians or they're from Greek, and they basically they eat late by default. That's just a culture. You go to France, people eat at 11 p.m. and that's what they always do. But I think if you live in a normal setting in the US, I don't think we need to eat after 7 p.m. So I'm adamant about it. In my family, nobody ever eats after 7 p.m. And that has had a massive impact, because then if you skip the morning breakfast at times, I do it many mornings, then you eat at 11 noon, and then you don't eat after 7, your time window of eating is not that big. And you can't eat that many calories in that time frame. And right. Then you sleep better because you haven't, if you eat 11 and you go sleep right after, you're not going to sleep that well. And then I think the last point on this, alcohol, I'm a Finn originally, and if people know something about Finns, we drink a lot, and it's like very unhealthy at times when you go back home and you see people getting wasted in alcohol. Not very smart. But drinking alcohol at night has a massive impact on your sleep. Mm-hmm. And like I talked about earlier, I mean, I optimize not for the physical performance or the looks. I optimize for human performance, also the mind. And I know the data so well now that if you have a glass of wine at 9 p.m., you will not get the proper REM sleep. REM sleep is the sleep that is basically making your brain recover after the day. And if you don't let your brain to recover after the day, you will not learn anything in a moment. So if you have a glass of wine every night for a year at 11, one class, big class, your ability to learn decreases dramatically. And those are kind of things that most people don't know. So I have a glass of wine almost every other day, but I do it at 5 p.m.
Love that. Lots of great tips there. I have to tell my wife about the wine. Because I get on her about that. Every once in a while, it's fine. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic. But yes, I love what you talk about, closing the kitchen at 7. I'm the same way. Some type of fasting, closing that window. It doesn't have to be really, really, it doesn't have to be an hour or two. It could be, a few hours, giving yourself time to get a couple meals in. But when you have structure in your day like that, it's tough to indulge in certain things because most people eat a lot of junk at night anyways, past 7 o'clock. There's not a lot of good things that happen anyways, as far as food is concerned. So yeah, Ari, I love all the knowledge. I really appreciate it. And where's the best place for people to find you?
The easiest way to find Elo is to go to elo.health. And we are open today in every state except New York. New York is coming soon. New York blood testing regulations are kind of tough. You can also find us at Instagram, elo.health, Facebook, LinkedIn, and elsewhere. And if you want to find me, my name is Ari Tulla. I think I'm the only one with that name in the world. So if you Google me, I'm the easiest person to find. There's nobody else with my name.
Very unique, right? All right, Ari. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and thanks so much for everything sharing today.
Hey, thank you. That's wonderful. Have a great one.
Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.